Hey guys, I'm Kate. Welcome back to the Next Pitch podcast. Thank you guys for being so patient with us last week. We did not have a new episode. If you don't know, now you'll know. I live in Texas and we were a frozen tundra. The week before, I was on severe power restrictions. Most of the state didn't have power at all, so I was doing better than a lot of people. But it just felt like under the circumstances, and then with the circumstances of being unsure that I would actually have power long enough to record a podcast episode, I rescheduled some interviews and we decided to just go ahead and forego last week's episode. So I just wanted to say thank you guys for your patience. We did get a lot of stuff done this week, so there's a lot of great content coming your way. Not in a frozen tundra, in sunny California, is Lucas. How are you doing, bud?
I'm warm. I'm doing well. I actually jumped in a pool today. Shocker, but we were playing some basketball at my dad's house, and he's got a pool, and worked up a little bit of a sweat. Maybe I'm just a little out of shape. I don't know, but the pool felt good. But yeah, it's good to be back. It's good to be back podcasting up with you. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I know it's warmer here now. Also, I went home to Houston this weekend. Shout out to the new Mrs. Emma Espinoza. We had a very small wedding this weekend for a very dear friend of ours, and she is an avid listener, which at her own wedding, she complimented our podcast to me. And I was
Hey,
like,
you love to hear it.
you have other things to worry about right now, but I really appreciate that. So, yeah, I got to Houston and my parents' house. My parents are getting a little mini remodel. They had a pipe bust, and so their master bedroom is torn down to nothing right now, which
That's
is really
crazy.
wild to see. And then I have an aunt and uncle that got power back yesterday after 16
Hey,
days without it. So yeah, things are pretty rough down here. The Houston humidity punched me in the face. Don't know how I lived in that for so many years of my life. But yeah, it was warm this weekend. It's shocking. Like it went from being like -2 to like 78 within like 4 days.
that's crazy.
Yeah. Thanks, Texas.
Wow. Kate, besides all of that, which has been a crazy whirlwind, I'm sure, baseball is back.
Baseball is back. Oh,
Let's
spring training games
go.
started today. We had college baseball going.
hmm
It's
hmm
God, it's something special. We got to see Arenado take his first at bat as a Cardinal.
Yeah,
Uh, Trey Mancini took his first at bat after
that
beating
was awesome.
cancer. Yeah, and he got a
Yep.
hit. So we just got some good things going on. I'm really excited. It feels like normalcy is returning. Uh, I really just didn't think that spring training was going to be on time. And now that it's like on time and we're playing games, Angel Hernandez, mid-season form. Some things
Oh,
never change.
Never changed. Jack Flaherty was, for lack of a better term, screwed on a couple calls a day. But before we move on from baseball, definitely got to give a shout out to my guy Sam Long. Sam, I've known since high school. He was drafted by the Rays, was cut back in 17 or 18, I believe, and was actually going to step away from the game. Started throwing again. Actually came into OA where I work through a bullpen. Got signed by the White Sox. Went out, had a pretty good year in Single A in 19. Didn't play last year due to COVID. Got a contract with the Giants and made a one inning, no run, one hit, 1K for the Giants today at Big League Camp, which was pretty awesome to see Sam and his childhood team's jersey pitching, pumping 97 from the left side. So awesome. Just shout out to Sam and hope to see him going forward. But yeah, watching baseball, it was great. So
Doing some big things. And then in addition to Sam, you were telling me I didn't get to watch very much this weekend. I spent most of my weekend in a car driving back and forth to Houston. But you were telling me that we had a pretty crazy weekend in college baseball.
yeah, I mean, can you imagine if Alabama, Clemson, and the other top 10 schools in football all got upset in the weekend, except for Arkansas? One top 10 team didn't lose, but there has, I think Ole Miss maybe hasn't lost either, but 8 of the top 10 teams have been upset. Florida lost, Vandy lost twice, UCSB dropped out of the top 10. Like, everyone is just, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's a madhouse in college baseball right now. And I think, as we were talking earlier, just that it's how impactful a starting pitcher can be on a game. Where Arkansas actually won, but they're playing Southeastern Missouri State, some school I'd never heard of, and they had their ace lefty, this guy that was 993 with a gross changeup, and I think he went 6 or 7 strong, and Arkansas had to have a walk off in the 10th inning to beat them. But yeah, that, and then also with COVID, with these guys getting an extra year, and it's just crazy. This is something that you wouldn't see in other college sports.
Yeah, it's definitely been a little bit of a mass shakeup. I think the starting pitcher value sometimes like we can lose it, obviously, with teams going to like an opener now, which
Mhm.
is still a very weird concept to me. But when you have a starter that eats up innings, it's a huge difference maker. On the flip side, when you have a starter who gets rocked in the first inning and comes out, it usually will screw your bullpen for an entire weekend. So
Mhm.
I think sometimes we just kind of take for granted how good, how steady starters are. I want to give a huge shout out to Jaden Hill of LSU. Talk about a changeup. Oh my
Wow.
God. And then he's sitting like 97, 98. Just, he worked out with a guy that I know this off season, and I know he put a lot of work in, and he's looking really good. So
He's
excited
looking
to see
really
what comes
good.
from him.
Vanderbilt, even though they lost, their pitching rotation is out of this world, as we've been able to see on Twitter, highlighted by Rob Friedman, who was on our last episode. But I think you just made a good point there. One thing I hadn't thought of was a lot of teams are doing 4-game series now, just with COVID and trying to minimize the travel and all of that. And so you take a college team and you put them to a 4-game series. All of a sudden now the bullpen's got to last over 4 games instead of 3 games. If a starter in the first game gets knocked out in the third inning, that Sunday, even Monday, depending on when they're playing the third or fourth game, could look like anything at this point.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of upsets this year in college baseball. We already are, obviously.
Yeah.
And then I think that for the players, it's going to be a slightly easier transition to pro ball. I think this is going to be their like taste of what pro ball series are like. They're still going to get those days off. It's still going to be a little different. Your starters aren't going to be throwing twice in 1 week, but they're gonna get a little taste of what that feels like when your bullpen's stretched a little further and you got to eat up innings and you're put in different spots. So we'll see. We'll see who the deep pitching teams are, right?
It'll be fun to watch. Yeah, like that 12th, maybe 13th pitcher on your roster that might get a total of 5 innings a year and blowout games and might now have to pitch in some meaningful innings. So it'll be fun to watch. Before you dive too much into baseball, I know it's the off season, but we've got a pretty good interview coming up with an ex-NFL wide receiver. Kate, you want to tell us a bit about that?
We did. So his name's Greg Camarillo. He played for San Diego, Miami, Minnesota, and then New Orleans was the last team he was with. He played in college at Stanford, and that Stanford education just really seeps through. So Lucas actually had to work when we were able to record, and you got to listen back to it. You did all the editing on the episode. And I hope, did that come through to you? Because the whole time that I was talking to him, I was just not shocked by his thoughtfulness, because I think like a lot of players are thoughtful, but it was just very apparent from the very first moment that he has not only a high football IQ, but just like a high life IQ.
Yeah, it's obvious pretty early on, as you said in the interview, to hear that. And I think it's just a lot of his responses are really well put together. He's really calm, I guess is the word to say. I guess on podcasts, some people could be a little antsy or, a little anxious about speaking too long or saying the wrong thing. But I think he gave really well thought out responses, and he had a couple of things that he said that threw me off guard and some things I hadn't thought of. So it was definitely, I learned something just listening back to it, and I think that our listeners today will get a nice little treat listening to him. So.
Yeah, one of the things, the whole reason I reached out to him in the first place is he went kind of semi-viral last week for a thread talking about how they just don't, you're not prepared when you leave a sport. You go into the professional level, you're the best of the best, elite 1%. You achieve this pinnacle at this really young age, but it's a short career. So it's like, the brightest lights burn out the fastest, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's this career that you're not going to extend out for forever. And one of the things you and I were talking about before we started recording is that the excitement that you get playing when you're done, all of a sudden you've got to go into a career. And for some
Mm-hmm.
people, that's going to be a desk job. And I think that we kind of get caught up in like the Peyton Mannings, you know, the eventual Tom Brady, Derek Jeter when he retired, where you have like this whole retirement like ceremony and you know you're going out, you get to say goodbye to the game that you like the way you want to, and you've made millions and millions and millions of dollars and you're set for the rest of your life. For the average NFL player, that's not the case. You know, many guys get cut like Greg did. Greg got cut right before Thanksgiving and then, you know, thought there was a chance he could come back and it never
Mm-hmm.
happened. So he didn't get the big grand farewell. It was just done. It was done in one sentence. Hey, thanks for your time. Don't have space for you anymore. Best of luck.
You get cut, you get injured. Yeah, I think as you said, the spotlight is definitely on these guys that have had these long careers, and we know the end's approaching, and they go on a farewell tour, and it's their last year, and you know, fans get to pay their respects, and every stadium they play in for the last time, they get standing ovations, and with, for lack of a better comparison, it's almost like losing a parent, where you have a parent in your life, your whole life, and they're a big part of your life pretty much every day, as baseball or football or basketball, whatever sport it is that you play, is you go to practice and you train for it almost every day. And then 10 years later, 18 years later, 25 years later, it's just taken from you. And a lot of times you don't know exactly what day that's going to be. And then you just, what do you do next? It's crazy, it's scary, but it's the reality.
Yeah, it was I learned a lot, but also I just think that it's really eye-opening. You and I obviously know a lot of pro guys in baseball. My best friend's a football player. I know several hockey guys, I know a couple basketball guys. Like you see these guys in this realm and when you know them on a personal level, there's so many things that you hear behind the scenes that I think the average person doesn't take into consideration that Greg does a tremendous job of vocalizing and elaborating on eloquently. That's the only word I can come up with. Like his
Yeah.
answers were just insightful and thoughtful and concise to the point, just made his point well. So it was an interview I really, really enjoyed. Like I mentioned, you didn't get to be on it, but I did have somebody with me. So Kendall Blackshear, who is my co-host on another podcast that I'm on, the Gym Bag podcast with George Iloka. The three of us went to high school together. George is currently rehabbing an ACL injury. So we're on a recording hiatus. And I texted Kendall and said, I've got a football guy. Do you want to come on with me? And Kendall, his two best friends are NFL safeties. And so it's nice to have somebody who's really aware of both sides of the game too. And I thought Kendall made the interview a lot of fun. And in his day job, Kendall just won the Teacher of the Year award. So I wanted to give
Hey.
a shout out to him for that too. But yeah, I was really appreciative of both Kendall and Greg just giving me their time and sharing their thoughts with me. So I hope you guys listen to the episode, enjoy it, and go follow Greg on Twitter because, like I said, he's just super intelligent and the way that he views the game in general is really insightful. So you'll learn a lot.
Yeah, Greg's a great follow on Twitter, and just one more quick shout out to Kendall. He did the whole episode with a 1-year-old sleeping in the room.
So
That is very impressive.
Yeah. My niece knew that Auntie KK needed to get through that episode, so she did us a favor and stayed asleep the whole time.
That's impressive. All right, Kate, are you ready to get into this interview?
Let's do it. Hey guys, it's Kate, and I am here with two very special guests, actually. I have Kendall, and if you've ever listened to me on the Gym Bag podcast, you'll recognize his voice. How's it going, Kendall?
It's going pretty well. I got a 1-year-old sleeping in the next room, so y'all wish me luck.
Lots of thoughts and prayers. And then we have Greg Camarillo, who is a retired NFL veteran. Now you're in broadcasting, correct?
Yes, and academic counseling for student athletes. Combination of the two.
You were all over the place. That Stanford education coming into play here.
Yes, and I have survived 3 1-year-olds. So Kendall, man, we'll keep it down just so you don't wake the little one up.
She's an angel. He'll tell you she's not, but she is perfect.
She
She's
just
mean
slept
to
through
my
a
little
ice
niece.
storm here, so I think she could sleep through her interview.
Nice.
Also true. Greg, I reached out to you because you actually posted a really interesting thread the other day about how no one really prepares you for the transition from playing in the NFL to retiring at a young age. And I do want to get there. That's something that's like near and dear to my heart, all of the mental health stuff. But let's kind of start with your backstory. So you played at Stanford.
I did. I spent 5 years at Stanford.
Okay, and you graduated then with I'm guessing multiple degrees, maybe?
No, 1 degree. I just spread it out over 5 years. I went to Stanford as a walk-on, so I was on a 4-year plan. I was doing engineering, product design engineering, and playing football. And fortunately, got better at football, so I got a scholarship, which allowed me to push it to a 5-year plan.
That's incredible.
So
Having
you
that
walked on
background
as a punter and you switched to receiver.
I
did some research on that.
Yeah, I walked on as both. It was a punter / receiver. So I was already admitted to school. I had multiple connections to the head coach, who was Tyrone Willingham, and went in there for, not really a recruiting visit, but it was let's see if you can play football visit. So it's so long ago, I brought my VHS tape and had receiver highlights and punting highlights. And he was like, well, let's give you a try as a punter. And I was like, well, can I try receiver too? And I guess he figured he had already given me a locker and a uniform, so why not try both? And fortunately, I got better at receiving and didn't have to do the punting.
It's dope, man.
That's really wild. And being a walk-on is just like a different breed. I feel like that takes like an entirely different mind. I have a cousin who's a walk-on at Texas Tech right now, and you are essentially at points like a punching bag. I mean, that's what it feels like. Is he just...
I was absolutely a punching bag. I refer to it as a crash test dummy. So one of my first jobs in college I was there for them to help practice blocking punts. So I would punt the ball and they would just run into me blocking it. And I was just cool with it. I was happy to be on a college football team, and that was my job. But yes, absolutely, I was a punching bag.
Yeah, that's what he always says. He's like, I'm essentially a volunteer for Texas Tech football.
Yep.
He's like, and it's really hard when you're like looking around at all the guys who are on scholarship and you're working just as hard, if not harder, to earn that respect and kind of get there. So you finished at Stanford and you were a free agent. You were an undrafted free agent, correct?
Yes. I didn't have the greatest college career, an average receiving college career, but still had that drive to play football. So I figured I'd give it a shot. I actually had a tryout with an arena football team because I just wanted to keep playing. But then fortunately, I got a shot to try out with the San Diego Chargers as well. And that's what launched my NFL career.
Okay. And then you played for several teams.
I did, 4 of them.
So kind of walk us through that process, because I don't think the average person realizes how difficult it is to move around in the league.
Yeah, and the transition from one team to a next, it happens like that. Like it's literally a matter of hours, in which I didn't even realize until it happened to me. So I spent 2 years with the San Diego Chargers, practice squad year, an active year, mostly on special teams. And then come year 3, they had drafted 2 receivers, a first rounder and maybe like a 4th rounder. So I just knew that my time there was limited. Come the end of training camp, I had played well, but it didn't matter. There was no space for me. I got cut. They wanted to put me on a practice squad, but fortunately Miami picked me up as an active player. So you've got, from the minute you get word about that, like you're literally on a plane 3-4 hours later. It is, Greg, the Dolphins picked you up, your flight's at 2. And so everything's rolling through your head trying to figure out what to do. I pack up my bags, I go to the airport, and I'm on my way to Miami. And it is literally that fast that you have to just get everything together and go. But, you're going for a great career opportunity. So it's exciting, even though there's some turmoil in your life.
Oh yeah. And then you're like, while you're on the plane, you're trying to figure out what's going on behind you. You're like, okay, well, I have a place in San Diego that now I need to figure out what to do with and how to get all my stuff. A trade or like a pickup situation like that is so frustrating because you're right. You do have hours, just
Yeah.
hours to
Yep.
figure out your whole life and just go. And then most of the time you're just leaving everything behind and
Yeah.
jumping
So
and
when this one happened, I was probably about 23, 24 years old, was living with a teammate at his house. So fortunately, I didn't have to pack up my stuff. I just put enough stuff in a bag. Fast forward, and I don't know if you want to come back to other parts of my career, but in 2010, I was traded. So I was in Miami. I get a tap on the shoulder in meetings and training camp saying, hey, the GM wants to meet with you, which normally means you're cut, but they didn't say bring your playbook. So I felt all right about this meeting. And he says, hey, Greg, do you know why I brought you in here? And I wanted to be like, F you, I have no idea. Tell me. But he was like, we traded you to Minnesota. And at this point, I am probably 27. I have a fiance then who's now my wife. I owned a house. I had a dog. My fiance then, my wife now, had just started graduate school on Monday. It was like a Wednesday. And they literally give you 4 hours to get your life together to leave. And it got like, I had a good cry with the offensive coordinator because your life gets flipped upside down. You're in a good situation. You're leaving. And the first thing I did was go get a haircut. I figured that'll get my life together. At least I'll look good going to a new team.
I love that mentality.
All right, so I have a quick question. So I drink a lot of Dos Equis, and I'm not just saying this because we're talking to you today. I believe, after doing my research, that you're one of the most interested men in the world.
Oh, wow.
So I'm about
honored
to tell you why. So not only making the league, but you are probably one of the people out of everybody who's ever made the league. You went to college as a punter, switched to receiver. You're Mexican, Jewish, and I read that you celebrate Christmas and Hanukkah.
Yep.
And not only did you make the league undrafted, but you stuck in the league. And I hear you telling me and Kate that basically, you had some struggles, pretty much like planting your feet and staying somewhere. Like you said, your fiance, now wife, she just started graduate school and you moved around a little bit, but that's still a blessing because you had, which is considered longer than an average career in the NFL. You played what, 5-6 years?
I spent 8 years in the NFL.
8 years, right?
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, it was a totally unexpected journey. And you're right. You go through that turmoil of changing teams and new locations, being a free agent, being undrafted. But it's all for a great opportunity. It's a childhood dream to play in the NFL. And so you kind of roll with those punches to be able to achieve that. Same thing with injuries. Like, it sucks to get injured, but it's like, okay, I'm getting injured because I'm playing football in the National Football League. Like, that's exciting.
How many Hispanic and Jewish teammates did you have?
Oh man, God, I could name every one of them. Not many, that's for sure. I think 2 other Jewish guys. Igor Olshansky was on the Chargers. He was a Russian Jewish guy, the biggest, scariest human being you've ever seen in your life.
That sounds, the name.
Yeah, he was, scary guy. Sage Rosenfels is a Jewish quarterback.
Yeah, we know Sage. He played Houston.
God, that might be it. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying when you're on the short list?
It's rare. And then you take the Hispanic factor, and there's, there might be a kicker or two along the way, but there's not very many Hispanic guys. Luis Castillo was actually who I was living with when I was traded. He is the first Dominican NFL player, but there's really not very many Mexican ones. And so I always took pride in being different, I guess. It didn't, really have an impact on my NFL career, but fans would say, hey, Greg, I follow you because I'm Jewish and I want to cheer for a Jewish NFL player. Or Greg, I'm a Mexican Dolphins fan and I'm super excited to have a Mexican guy on the team. And so it was a little sense of pride right there to be representing these smaller communities.
So to dive into your versatility, do you speak Spanish also?
I speak a little bit of Spanish. A little bit of Spanish. I actually do online Zoom lessons with a Spanish tutor in Guatemala. So it is a work in progress.
I am desperately trying to learn Spanish and it is not going well. I have little nieces that are half Mexican. And the other day she had me say something and she looked at me and she goes, Tia, your accent is not good. And I was like, Thank you for the reality check,
It's
child.
the effort. You get an A for the effort.
I know. I probably got a C for the effort in her eyes. 7-year-olds are tough critics, man. She puts me in my place. So I had someone I was close to in baseball got traded to Miami, and one of the things that he said is that when he got there, he actually switched to a walkout song that was Latin because he needed some connection to the fans. With you being Mexican, when you got to Miami, did you feel like there was a different like level of embracement there?
Oh, that's a great question. Yes, but more of on just a not necessarily the deepest level, and I excuse if you hear my kids going wild in the background.
Trust me.
I mean, one is speaking a basic level of Mexican Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
It is hard to understand Cuban Spanish or Dominican Spanish.
Right.
I mean, that's a whole other lingo. Yeah, I mean, there was just some love, and I loved being able to hear fans pronounce my name correctly, which I love. They were pronouncing it better than I do, and then the Cuban food, man, that's a winner. That's a winner right there. So it was not. I didn't like dive headfirst into the Latino community, into the Latinx community. And that, I mean, we could do a whole nother podcast on that statement right there, but it was just fun to be in a city with a proud, strong, big Latin community.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. You were born and raised in California?
Yeah, in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area.
So you said that you got traded to Minnesota, correct?
Yeah. Oh,
so how different is that? Because we just went through our first ice storm here in Texas. I was not prepared.
No, I was not prepared. So, I mean, I was in Miami. I had tank tops and shorts, for my entire wardrobe. I mean, I went and bought a jacket immediately. I was traded in the summer, so
a jacket or a coat, because there's a big ass difference.
Yeah. It was. And so the first year I was there, they had the worst snowstorm in decades. The Vikings dome collapsed. I had a rental car that I immediately went and swapped out for a 4-wheel drive truck as soon as the first snow came, because you're driving this base model Chevy Malibu, and once those roads get slick, I'm a California guy sliding all over the place. But then when the first snow came, I was outside playing in it, having a blast, because I'm not used to that, and I get to leave in January. So it was a fun experience. I would not move to any snow region for good, but it was a fun experience for a little bit of time.
And you get out of there. That's a good point. You get out of there, like the worst of the Minnesota winter is January and February. So you get to head right out right before it gets too bad.
I was on the first thing smoking out of town, that's for sure.
How difficult is it so we talked about like getting traded, your whole life's uprooted. Obviously, when you got traded from Miami, like that phone call to your fiance has got to be the worst, where you're just like, hey, love you, but also I just flipped our life upside down in like 30 seconds.
I'll see you in a few months. Yeah, I mean, I was crying. Like there was so many emotions going on that it was, I didn't quite know how to handle it. You can't just uproot everyone instantly.
Right.
And so I went and got my hair cut, had some time to think, but it was, what does my wife do? I'm going, like, it's either I quit football or go with the trade. So that's a no-brainer. But then it's like,
right.
What do you do? What do you do with your house? What do you do with your dog? What do you do with your car? It's just, it all happens so fast that it just takes some time to sit down and think about it. But they're paying you very well to do it, so you just have to roll with the punches, and spend some of that money to get your house packed up, or spend some of that money to have 2 rents. It's just you just go with it.
I would like to know if you advise other men who are going through turmoil, who have a fiance or a wife and kids, when things get hard, should they go get a haircut?
Yes, absolutely. First thing.
Did that change your self-confidence and your outlook on life?
Oh yeah,
the haircut?
You can't show up. You can't be the new guy at a place with a raggedy haircut, man. You got to show up looking good. But it's kind of a theme in my life so that day I went and got a haircut when my first daughter was almost born. So my wife started feeling like labor pains. I thought it was a good idea to start trimming my hair at home too. And then it got real. So I trimmed this side. This side looked great. And then we had to go to the hospital and this side was all jacked up. So I made sure that I posed all my pictures on this left side. So
you had an actual good side.
yes.
I feel like that's like a standard for women too. I feel like you can always tell when a woman's gone through like a real big life change because her hair color is different, or all of a sudden she comes out with short hair and you're like, something happened.
It's, sometimes a fresh style will make you feel good. Turmoil can mess your life up. A fresh haircut can make you feel good.
My other question for you is, how hard is it? Like, so your whole life's been uprooted. You get to Minnesota, and not only do you have to learn a whole new city, you have to learn a whole new organization, which is also something I don't think people understand, that like organization culture wise is just black and white and orange and blue and gray. They're all different. They're so different. But then you also get handed a playbook that looks like this, and they say, okay, learn it.
Yeah.
You've got no time.
The learning the playbook is probably one of the toughest obstacles, especially as a guy that was coming as a backup wide receiver. You got to learn all the receiver spots. And normally you start learning in like May, and you've got all the way till September to learn the whole thing. You show up and it's literally like they slap this gigantic binder in front of you. And they're like, hey, learn this. So my final year as a free agent, I got a chance to try out with the New Orleans Saints because I had been working out with Drew Brees. And I go there and I do my tryout. They say, Greg, we want to sign you. The next thing they do is literally slap down that entire playbook. We're talking 300, 400, 500 plays, new terminology. Most teams will say, learn these 10 plays for tomorrow, learn these 20 plays for tomorrow. But in New Orleans, what they wanted to find out what I could do was, can this guy learn this stuff without being helped? Basically, can the starters still do all they need to do? And if we need Greg, will he learn this stuff on his own? Right. And I honestly contemplated like just saying, it's been a good career. I can't learn this. Let's move on. But that wouldn't have been a good story. And I probably wouldn't have told you if that's how my career ended. So, I learned, I dove in head first. Stressed out, stayed up late, woke up early. And because I was able to digest most of that, they knew they could trust me in a situation come a game where Greg hasn't gotten any reps, but we can put him in because we trust that he knows these plays and will know what to do.
So on that note also, let's talk about the demand on you as an NFL player, because what I've noticed, and I'm sure Kendall can say this too, we're in a sports group and we regularly have to text each other away from it about things that we want to say back to people but can't. But the amount of time that is expected out of you week in and week out in the season and then out of the season, your off season is almost worse than your in season, because you're just trying to get as strong as you possibly can before you go into the season. You're just trying to maintain, right? Yeah. And then in the season, you've got short weeks, which are always lovely. Don't you love when you have a Sunday game and turn around and have Thursday the next week?
I actually didn't mind it because there's less practice. So it's just like, all right, we'll get to go play a game. But yeah, it is tough.
So walk us through or tell us what that was like for you as a player, because I truly don't think the average fan understands that. Like, you guys typically get one day off a week. That's it. And that day is expected to be film at home, not just chill. It's like, see your family.
So our work weeks start on Wednesday, and Wednesday is usually you'll start lifting around 7 and then you'll be done around 4 or 5. So it's not necessarily the amount of time that, a lot of people's jobs are that same amount of time, 5 days a week, right. But it's the emotional and physical energy that you put into it. Wednesday, you're lifting, you're in meetings all day, learning plays, you go to practice, you come back from practice, you go to more meetings. So when you are done, you are exhausted. Thursday's the same thing, same amount of time. Usually a harder day for wide receivers because they work on third down, so you're running all the time. And then Friday is a shorter day. You'll be same type of thing, but done around 2 or 3. Saturday is the half day. It is, some walkthroughs, some meetings. And so the time commitment on those days is not bad unless you're traveling. And then Sunday's game day, and that's the entire day.
Right.
Which will have, everything is about preparing for that game. You're not going to do anything else. You're not going to go to Walmart and pick up some stuff before the game. Monday, you come back in, you lift weights, you study film for that game. You might do some conditioning. You've got meetings. And then Tuesday is the glorious off day. But you're also expected to watch film. You might even hit the weight room again. That's the day that a lot of guys do community service. But, I don't want to say that like I'm complaining about it. You grind that out for 4 months of the season. You grind through a month of camp, and then the off season is glorious. You have at most a half day worth of working out and conditioning to do. And then you get to go on vacation. You get to chill. It's your time to recover mentally and physically. The only bad part is if you're injured, you're in rehab every day. I tore my ACL 1 year. There is no off season. You're in there every day, getting back. But the NFL off season makes up for the grind of the NFL season.
Yeah, during the season's really tough. So you tore your ACL. Let's talk about that mentally, because I had double knees there. I had both knees done at the same time. Not ACL surgery, thank God.
Yeah.
But I shattered my right kneecap, and then my doctor was just like, genetically your kneecaps are in the wrong place, so let's just go move the left one like while we're repairing the right one. And
that's gross.
yeah, it was really fun. But he also knows me well and knew I would not come back for the left one. And it turns out if you walk on a bad knee for 9 months, you tear up the other one. So I actually ended up having a double repair. And the thing, I think I'd had bad injuries. So I've been a competitive athlete my whole life. I'm a swimmer, work in baseball, been around athletes my whole life. The thing that took me by most surprise is I did not have a good recovery. I did not recover the way we thought we would. All the timelines were shot to hell. And I went into surgery thinking one thing and then came out with a totally different perspective. Around week 3, I thought I was losing it. Mentally, it was the hardest thing I've ever gone through. And I got back into my doctor's appointment and I looked at my surgeon and I said, I think I'm depressed. And he said, yeah, no shit. I just pulled your legs out from underneath you. Like, you're an athlete and I just took that away from you. What is that like at the level you're at? So you're still expected to be there all the time. You're still around everyone who are competing, and the payoff is the game. Like, the game is the reward for everything you go through that week. What's it like having to still go through all that and not having that payoff?
Yeah. The hardest part was sitting in the stands watching my team play in a playoff game. So I got injured week 11, I believe it was. The team went on a hot streak. And then they made it to the playoffs for the first time in a long time. And I go to the stadium and they literally give me tickets in the seats with the fans. And so I'm crutching through the stadium, slightly intoxicated because it was the first time I got to tailgate in a long time. I pulled out the Dos Equis like Kendall would.
Yeah.
And so you're sitting in the stands and the fans are going nuts. The smoke's blowing when the team runs out and you're not part of it. You're not on the sideline. You're not in the pregame speech. And it is hard to watch. You want them to be successful, but it's hard to watch them be successful without you. So that was a struggle. But then there's no break. So as soon as the offseason hits, you are in mental and physical full grind mode to get your leg right. And the end of every physical therapy session is, for an ACL recovery, the trainer literally jumps on you and pushes your knee back as far as he can possibly crank it to stretch the ligament. It's torture. It is like you put a towel in your mouth, you bite down. And so you do that every single day, and then you're back into the grind of the season. which is just, you need a mental break somewhere in there. So that
Right.
is hard. And then when you first come back, Kate, like you mentioned, the doctor took your legs from you. Your legs don't function like they used to. It takes a long time to get back to being able to jump the way you jump, to explode the way you did. So you're playing, you're out there on the field doing your best, but it's not what you were used to doing. The good part of my injury was that I had signed a contract extension 4 days I signed it on a Thursday. I got hurt on a Sunday. So they were financially invested in me, and I had time to make a comeback,
Right.
which took some of the pressure off of getting back as quickly as possible.
That's helpful, because I think that happens to a lot of guys too, and then they try and like rush through the recovery process because they're just so desperate to get back.
Yeah.
But that's a good point too, that like you have to relearn your body, and you feel betrayed. You feel betrayed when you try and do something that was so easy before and you can't do it. As an athlete, it's the most frustrating thing I've ever gone through. I still cannot jump like I used to jump. I used to do box jumps all the time, and now I just like look at a box and I'm like, maybe next lifetime.
Yeah.
It ain't happening yet. So staying in that same vein, the whole reason that I reached out to you in the first place is you posted a really incredible thread on Twitter the other day that was very transparent about that transition from being an athlete to retiring. And like you said, it's the biggest time suck. You are so invested. All of your mental and physical energy is invested in this one career. In that thread, you mentioned that you are at the pinnacle of your career, your job. You're the best of the best. You're the elite of the elite, the 1%. And then one day it's done. And no one really prepares you for that transition. They never tell you what's next. And some people naturally fit into a coaching role, and some people, like you, eventually transition into broadcasting. But what's that first day like when you wake up and you're just like, oh shit, I don't have to go to the field. I don't have to go run.
Yeah.
I don't.
The first day is actually nice. It's like, oh man, I get to sleep. I don't have somebody yelling at me. But part of that transition is, particularly with football, is that you don't really know exactly when that transition is. And so I was cut for my last time around Thanksgiving. And then was mentally done. Wasn't sure if I get picked up again that season. Maybe they'll call me, maybe I'll be back. So didn't have like a retirement moment. And then the following year, I just figured I'm done. Was mentally done. My legs were hurting. It was a good time to separate from the NFL. And my agent called and he's like, yes, one team just wanted to check in and make sure you're staying in shape. And that like relit the flame. Like, oh, like maybe I can get another year. Maybe they'll call. I should stay in shape. And so there's not that, at least in my experience and a lot of guys that I've spoken to, there's not like that one moment where it's like, I am walking away from this game. I am done.
Right.
Or a lot of times it's an injury where you break a bone in your back. You're like, okay, I'm clearly can't play football again.
Right.
So that also makes the transition harder, is you don't really know if you're done, if you're still going. And I've seen guys chase that for years, 3-4 years, where they literally do nothing but try to stay in shape, and then nothing happens, and they've wasted 3 or 4 years of their life. But the parts that you mentioned, suddenly not having a strict schedule, it's tough to figure out to have motivation to do something when okay, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to lift weights so I can be a better football player. I'm going to go to meetings so I can be a better football player. I'm going to go to practice and try to become a better football player. You have a set goal that you are working for every day, that you are passionate about, that you could put your energy into, and suddenly that's gone. The passion's gone, the energy's gone, the motivation is gone. That's difficult to cope with. And also, like you mentioned, you are at a pinnacle. You are experiencing lifetime highs in your 20s. You're playing in front of giant stadiums. Millions of people are watching you. Your dreams are coming true. You are pursuing your dream of, making a team or playing in the Super Bowl every single day. And then you're starting over at the beginning. And I a lot of the pushback from Twitter, a lot of great support, but a lot of pushback was, well, you've made a couple $1 million, why are you crying about it? And I don't want to discount that, because yes, you're starting over, you're starting in a great place that hopefully you're financially sound from saving that, but that doesn't stop identity issues, not being an athlete anymore, not having that goal, that motivation, the feeling of I retired at 30. How am I going to find comparable moments, for the next 40 years, 50 years? Will I ever feel the same excitement that I just felt? That's a tough thing to deal with. And then also being part of a Pinnacle is everyone wants to talk about it. They talk about the game you just played in. They talk about the season coming up. They talk about football. Everything is football. And then you don't have that to talk about anymore. For me, I was bitter that I wasn't still on a team. I didn't want to talk about football. And then I get into a new career and, Greg, hey, Greg, what do you do? Oh, I play in the NFL. Oh, my goodness, that's amazing. Let's talk about it. A year later, Greg, what are you doing now? I'm in graduate school. Oh, a couple of years later, Greg, what do you do now? I'm an academic counselor. Oh, and it's boring. It's not, it doesn't have the same luster that being a football player does. And that, it's probably not the healthiest thing for that to be a smack to your self-esteem, but it can be, and it was. And it's part of the reason why I got into broadcasting. It's a little more exciting.
Just to have like that attention. Yeah, I think I hate to make this like comparison, but it's the only way I can think to do it. It's like a drug, like the high, the attention. It is a high. You get addicted to it, whether you realize it or not. It's not that you're seeking out that attention all the time. It's a byproduct of the career.
Correct.
And then in 1 second, that's ripped out from underneath you. And it's difficult to step into a desk job.
Yeah.
And people do look at you different.
Yeah. Hey, you are 100% right. It's a byproduct of the career. But for me, it was also the feeling of every day you go to a weight room or you go to conditioning or you go to practice and you give it the best you've got, like literally to the point of exhaustion. And you gave it the best you got. And that feels good. Like it feels good to give your energy into anything, to put your all into it and start seeing results. It is very hard to get that in other aspects of life. I love my job. I put energy into my job, but at the end of the day, I don't sit back and be like, man, I did a great job with emails today. Like that's not, right. That doesn't make you feel good. Like parenting, Kendall can attest to this. I put a lot of energy into my children, but it's not like, oh man, I got 1% better at being a dad today. Maybe I'll see those effects 15 years down the line, but no matter how hard Kendall takes care of his 1-year-old, she's still going to cry at some point that day, and it's going to be frustrating. You just don't get the same feeling from other things that you do of pouring your energy into football and immediately seeing results.
So since you touched on the 1-year-old, that leads me to piggyback off of what you're saying. So there's also the family aspect of it. So you go from where your wife or fiance or the mother of your children is used to being away from you for a certain amount of time and taking care of the kids and doing certain things. And I don't know at what point y'all had kids, but then you're in the house every day and it's like, hey, oh damn, I'm kind of used to, waking up at 4, 5, 6, working out and seeing you then. And now I'm here. I'm used to seeing my kids and missing my kids. Now I'm here with them every day. You get to hear all those cries and see the messes and clean up the messes and change a few more diapers. And the closest thing that I have to it is the quarantine, because I've dealt with a lot of friends who are going through divorces now because it's like, well, damn, I was used to you going to work. Now I have to stare at your face every day. It's difficult. Can you touch on the changes that it made for you and your family after retirement?
Yeah. Fortunately for me, things at home were good post-career. I had my first child like January 5th after the first season my final season had ended. So it was like 2 months, not even 2 months after I was done with football. And so it was when I talked about, the income of NFL can do for you post in a career. I was able to be at home for years, honestly, for a couple years and spend that time. I didn't have any of the relationship issues being at home a lot. And I'm very thankful because I see that with other guys, just like the pandemic. When you start being around each other a lot more, and if you don't get along that well, it's gonna cause some problems. And so I've seen guys go through marital issues when they're done playing. Yeah, it is real when you have that transition, and then suddenly, you maybe things aren't 100% tight in your life. You're going to put that on someone else, or if your relationship's not sound, that extra turmoil can cause some problems.
2 other piggyback questions. So, are you able to stay in shape after retirement?
Yes, that is so. So I had a discussion with someone the other day about why I still identify as an athlete, and it's because I still put a lot of time and energy into maintaining it. Like I'm anti-dad bod in this world. I'm trying my hardest to dad bod. So yes, I that is part of my daily drive. It's tied to my self-esteem. When I feel like I'm in shape, when I feel athletic, I feel better about myself. And so it is something that I will maintain as long as my body lets me maintain it.
And I wish I would have did the same thing post my athletic career, but I chose the Dos Equis over the gym. And so I'm competitive drinking right now.
There you go.
But
hey man.
How do you feel when you watch games, high school games, college, NFL? Is it
so you're excused as you have a 1-year-old. When she becomes a little older, then I might jump on you to get in the gym and put the Dos Equis.
I appreciate
down.
that.
We're gonna hold you to that.
For now, it's fine, man. Totally acceptable. So when
do you mind tweeting that?
Yeah, I got.
Is there a window? 1, 2? Is there an age you have? You're allowed to have the dad bod for a certain amount of time.
That's fair. Yes.
Okay, cool.
I don't know. I gotta think about it though. But yeah. So after retiring, I totally separated from football for probably 2 years. I did not watch NFL football. I didn't want to talk about NFL football. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that I thought I could still be out there. I see a receiver drop a pass. I'm like, well, that should be me. Or, that was.
But you would have caught it.
I would have caught that. Yeah. I mean, I might have been injured because I was old or not that far down the field because I wasn't as fast, but it's tough to deal with that. You still have the ability to be out there. Like a year after retirement, not much had changed with me physically. I could have still competed. So that was tough. I separated from football for a couple years and then slowly made my way back into the football world. Now I love it because it is a huge part of my life, and I know a massive amount of information about football. I played, somebody made me count the other day, 18 years, I think, of football total in my life.
And what age does that start at?
I played 1 year of Pop Warner in 5th grade and then high school after that. So I was real soft as a youngster. So the Pop Warner football kicked my butt and I didn't stick around. But I mean, if you do 18 years of anything else at a high level, look at college and pros, that's a PhD. Equivalent amount of studying. I'm not saying I want to have a PhD in football, but if you spend that much time studying something, you are an expert in it. And so I have this massive amount of knowledge of football that I like to share. And, that's part of the reason I'm in broadcasting is so I can share that. But I'm also at home and I love it when my wife asks questions. Why did that happen? Or what's your take on this? Or if I can beat the broadcasters to it. Oh, this happened because of that. And 2 seconds later, they say it. It makes me feel good to use my knowledge that I've accumulated. So I like watching football for that reason because it resonates with me. It is permanently in my head and I understand it. I get it. And I like to watch it for that reason.
I'm not sure what Kate's personal connection was to all of your tweets, but when she screenshot them and she sent them over to me, I felt something in my spirit because like you said, I counted a few years back and added up all of the years. I started playing around 7 years old in middle school, high school, college. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it to the next level, but I'm surrounded by multiple friends who are playing and who have played. And I felt the exact same way 2 or 3 years. I couldn't watch. I couldn't talk. I spent more time watching the games on Saturdays and Sundays. Look at this bum. I could be doing that and just being aggravated with the fact that somebody was messing up when people all mess up on plays. No one's perfect, but I couldn't enjoy the game, and so I had to
Mhm.
take a step away from it. And I felt everything that you were feeling when you decided to type those tweets. So thank you for doing that. And I want you to know that you're an overcomer, man, because you said you were soft as a kid, but you still, decided to come back to football multiple times. You walked on, you made the league as a Mexican Jewish guy, and I believe that all of that's dope. And you don't let anybody tell you that it's not. I think you should write a book, honestly.
Oh, wow. It's a little easier to tweet than to write a book.
Oh yeah, for damn sure.
But Kendall, man, I appreciate that. And what I love is that, and I was just like Drake and just in my feelings during those tweets. It wasn't like there was no goal, but I loved how many people have said similar things to you, Kendall, that and all across all sports. That's another interesting part. My tweet was about football players because that's the world I know. People from all other sports experience the same type of identity loss and struggles when they were done with their sports. Military folks hit me up saying the same thing. It's just the impact of people just saying it, like making it a conversation, I think can help, because that way, when you get it out, you feel better about everything. Mm-hmm. And so just making it a conversation is a positive byproduct of me just hitting tweet and sending out my thoughts.
Well, and I think it's even harder now because now we're watching guys play so much. I mean, Tom Brady is 43, right?
Oh man.
Yeah. Like he's out there and he's still, he just won a freaking Super Bowl at 43.
Wow.
And I went to Oklahoma State. So I've watched Patrick Mahomes play in person. Unreal. And I work with pitchers. His arm, just so you guys know at home, he has an infinity ERA in college. He pitched one game for Texas Tech. It did not go well, and he did not record an out. So his ERA is literally infinite. But you just look at an arm like that, it's so special. And he's going to have a long career, knock on wood, that he stays healthy. But I think that makes it more difficult. And you were in right about the time that you came out of the league was the time that was really starting to happen, where guys are doing everything they can to stay in as long as possible. Peyton Manning went and had stem cell surgery in Germany to keep playing. So was that difficult for you too, that you're like looking around and you're like, not only am I capable, I have the work ethic, but now there's no longer this like pseudo ceiling of an age limit?
Not so much for me. And I think that was because I wasn't expected to have a single moment in the NFL. If you look at my college stats, if you look at my speed, I wasn't supposed to be in the NFL. And so I was grateful for every year, every month. So when I first got a tryout, I was like, this is cool. I'm going to be in the NFL for 3 days for a mini camp. Then I got signed for the summer, and my buddy told me, he's like, it's the best summer internship you're ever going to have. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be in the NFL for a summer. That's amazing. And then after a year, I was like, wow. And it happened pretty much every step of the way. So to spend 8 years doing it, it was amazing. And my body was hurting at the end of 8 years, but it didn't kill my drive to see if I could get more. My head was also hurting. I was getting concussions much easier at 30 than I was at 22 or 23. But there's still that flame to keep going, even though Father Time doesn't want you to. And so I felt fortunate to have gotten 8 years. One of the best compliments I ever got was a coach that I did broadcasting stuff with. He said, he was with me my first 2 years. And after that, he said, Greg, I love watching your career. You maximized your potential. You did the very best you could in the NFL with the talents you were given. And to me, that was the biggest compliment that I have ever, could have ever asked for. It wasn't like, Greg, you caught 50 passes, great job. It was, he thought I did the very best for the talents I was given. And that made me feel good. And that's what allows me to look back at my career and think I was successful. I never made a Pro Bowl, anything, it was never all pro. I never won a championship, a million things like that you could measure.
Right.
But to me, I wasn't the biggest, strongest, fastest ever, but I still able to have a career. And that allows me to feel good about what I did. I see a lot of guys struggle with first rounders that are considered busts, that still struggle with it. Guys that signed big contracts and never lived up to that money, that they struggle with the fact that they didn't fulfill the potential that they were supposed to.
That's a difficult thing to live with. That happens a lot in baseball, where we have first round, especially pitchers. We're just like, the wrong organization gets a hold of you. There are truly so many factors that go into it, and you see guys really, really walk away that are just like, I could have done so much more, and it eats at you for the rest of your life. So I think that is like a nice thing to be able to put your head down at night and sleep on.
Yeah, especially in baseball, you can chase it till you're forever at every different league and every small town in America. But you're right. It is also a matter of landing at the right organization at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
We look at someone like Patrick Mahomes, who found himself a great situation. Then you look at a guy like Sam Darnold with the Jets. I'm not saying he's as talented as Patrick Mahomes, but like, his career could be over. He still has some talent, but because he landed in a shitty situation, he's not maximizing his potential, which is not really his fault.
Right. I think that's difficult for people to understand too, because you just assume that it's a level playing field. And I mean, you and I know, like, there's some organizations like the Jets obviously have not had the best reputation for the past decade, maybe longer. But okay, I have fun questions for you now. Just two quick ones. I'll start with the one that most people don't love to answer. I feel like not everyone likes to admit this, but there's usually one player that you just absolutely hated lining up against. Who is it?
Well, kind of two. Darrelle Revis, because he was just so good. Like, it's hard to get open for him, but he didn't cover me all that much because he would go find somebody better to cover. There was a guy with the Titans. I want to say it was Cortland Finnegan, I think is his name.
Yep, I remember him. He got into a big fight with Andre Johnson.
Oh yeah, exactly.
We have not forgotten his name in Houston.
He was just a pest, like a little bug that's just always bothering you every single play. Like, he was trying to start a fight, and most of the time within the rules of football, but it took so much extra energy to block him, to fight with him, to just muscle with him, that it was exhausting. And so I hated that. I didn't play maybe once or twice, but just that it required a next level amount of energy, and that it bugged the hell out of me.
So what you're saying is that when Andre Johnson beat him into the turf, you were not surprised.
Andre Johnson. Oh man, I've never cheered for one person in a fight so much in my life.
That guy's a legend. There may not be a football player on this earth that I love more than Andre Johnson.
Yeah.
He's an A+ human, A+ football player.
I enjoyed watching him play football. That's for sure.
And then what is a moment in your career, maybe not necessarily the most like prolific from the outside looking in, but like what moment in your career is like your pinnacle that you like sat down and you were like, this is it?
I can give you two. One is, I actually got a picture back here. I know it's a podcast and people can't see it and there's a horrible glare on it, but this picture right here, walking into the tunnel after the Dolphins game against the Chargers. So the first 2.5 years of my career were with the Chargers. I got sent to Miami, where I didn't play much for the first year. And then the second year I became a starter. And so 4 games into that season being a starter, the Chargers, my old team, my old friends, my old roommate, my old coaches came to town, where I had gone from being basically irrelevant with the Chargers to a starter with the Dolphins, had, let's say, 6 catches ish and a touchdown. That's the most important part. I had a touchdown that helped us win the game, with a friend guarding me. And it was like a great feeling of growth. I, started where I wasn't playing much, and now I got to play against my buddies, do
Was
well.
that the 64-yard touchdown?
That's not. That's
not that.
the
Okay.
picture right above it, right there. But it was just like a sense of the growth that I had experienced, and then getting to do it against your boys. That's way more fun. And then another one is running out of a helmet in Miami with the smog, the smoke, blowing, and being announced as a starter. Like, I didn't start in college. I didn't start for the first several years in the NFL. I always had dreamed about having my name yelled and coming out of that tunnel. And that was like euphoric to have it happen. It's also scary. I don't know if you've ever run through that smoke, but you cannot see, and you don't want to trip and fall in front of 80,000 people. But that was like just a moment of like, oh shit, I made it.
Do you think that's crazy that you didn't start or score in college, but when you got to the league, you were able to do both of those things?
It is wild, man. I mean, no, it was nuts. And I didn't announce that to anyone. And then I scored in the NFL, and one of the reporters was like, "Is it true that you haven't scored since high school?" And I was like, "Well, I guess the secret's out now." Yeah, man, it is. I don't really know how that happened, but I was around a lot of good players and a lot of good coaches that helped me improve and gave me opportunities to improve. And that's just, yeah, I don't
know how
even
much
have
you
a great
gamble,
response.
but you need to play the lotto, man. Because goddamn.
Well, and I think too, just like speaking to you, it's very obvious that and the Stanford education is like a big flashing neon sign about the intelligence, but it's obvious that you the way my cousin describes football in college versus high school is he says it's more cerebral. Like, he's like, it's a lot more like in high school, it was just like brute strength, right? He's 6'5", 250 pounds. He played in a 2A school here. And so he was like, I literally just manhandled people. And he was like, and then I get to college and everyone's that strong. And now it's just a lot more cerebral. He's like, I think the game's a lot more here. And I think that you have the work ethic, that's obvious. And then I think you just have that intelligence. And I think that is a huge tribute to your career and the success that you did have in the NFL.
Yeah,
So,
I appreciate that.
Don't set yourself down. I'm saying don't sell yourself short on this.
I appreciate that. It is actually, the rules benefit receivers in the NFL more than they do in college. And I'm not saying it's easier in the NFL, but the jump from high school to college was way bigger than the jump from college to the pros. Part of that is the rules. Part of that is I didn't grow up in Texas where high school football is college football.
Everything, yeah.
And also, I didn't lift weights in high school. For the first several years of college, I was more worried about engineering because I was a walk-on than I was. So I would cheat on my lifts and then get off the class as quickly as possible. And so as you know, once I got a scholarship, but really once I was pushing to play in the NFL, I didn't really like develop physically as much as I still had potential as far as getting stronger and faster. And, you know, once you become a pro, that's literally your job. And so that's when I really committed to becoming as fast as possible, becoming as strong as possible. And I think that helped a lot too.
And just to clarify, you did not trip running out of the helmet.
I never did. I always let someone else, clear it away. I kind of jog slowly just to make sure. It's scary though.
I can imagine. The Texans don't do, actually, I think they do some smog, but they shoot fire cannons up on either side. Like, and my seats are on the 30-yard line and you can feel it.
You feel that heat for sure.
I feel the heat, and I'm like, there is no way you could pay me to run out between them.
You absolutely feel it, and it is exhilarating. I love it.
See, I would just be afraid to be on fire, but that's the difference. That's why you played in the NFL and I didn't, among several other factors. But we're gonna blame the pyro for the big one. Greg, tell people where they can find you.
Twitter. I like to play on Twitter at Catch Camarillo. That is my main source of social media. I love to engage with fans. I love to engage with people. So if anyone, except for the negative tweeters, we don't like
Oh
them.
yeah, we don't like
But
that.
but yeah, at Catch Camarillo, come check me out, engage, and let's start some conversations.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Kate and Kendall. I appreciate you both.
A walk-on, non-starter turned pro starter for the Dolphins. That's wild.
It's insane. Like hearing his story, like hearing the way he talks about his time at Stanford, and just he never started at Stanford. He never caught a touchdown pass at Stanford. Okay, so he walked on at Stanford
As a punter.
as a punter and was like, "Hey, I can also catch." And the coach was like, "Ah, you're here. Go ahead." Like not even like, "Yeah, okay." It was just like, "You're around. You can try." So then he gets to play as a receiver, but he never ever has a touchdown. He goes and he tries out for the Chargers, right? And then gets to play for the Chargers, gets told he's going to get put on the practice squad, gets put on waivers, and Miami picks him up. And then all of a sudden he's a starter for the Dolphins. And then he has touchdown passes in the NFL. I would be curious to know, and we'll tweet this out this week. I'd be curious to know how many players did not have a single touchdown and how many offensive wide receivers. Let's clarify this because I'm sure there's some defensive players or like a random
Right.
offensive tackle that has scored a touchdown in the NFL. But I'm curious to see how many NFL wide receivers, starting wide receivers, did not have a single touchdown in college because I can't imagine that's a long list.
That's got to be probably single digits. I think that it kind of goes to show he was lucky enough to where he had the drive to keep playing and continue to try out even though he wasn't an undrafted free agent. He didn't have the ultimate starter success at Stanford that you would see from these guys that go and play in the NFL. But as we talked about last episode with Rod Friedman and Flatground and just the internet in general across all sports where guys that might not be at their peak level at 18, 19, 20, 21, having that chance to go play professionally even if they didn't perform at the highest levels in college.
Yeah, guys don't figure it out until they're like 26. And we're looking at guys at 22 and just projecting that they're going to do it. You know, how many first round busts have we seen? Quite a few. And then we've had guys who didn't even sniff a college mound come in and are just one of the biggest driveline success stories is a converted shortstop. Okay. Like, our, I guess, original biggest driveline success stories. They've had many success stories since, but
Right.
yeah, it's wild to me. So, and I don't think that you can overstate the value of just like one, work ethic, two, obviously he has a physical talent that's there, but also just like having that intelligence and that football IQ and being willing to like I don't think that people realize how thick those playbooks are. Like learning 400 plays is insane.
And not just 400 plays, but as he said he's a backup wide receiver, so he's got to learn 400 plays from 4 different positions because he doesn't know where he's going in. And then to talk about when he went to New Orleans and had to learn that in one night, like it definitely makes sense that he went to Stanford.
Yeah, for sure. So, athletes, don't underestimate the value of being intelligent.
It's vital on and off the field.
Very much so. Speaking of intelligence, just a word of advice from your faux parents on this podcast. Nothing that you've said on Twitter in the last 5 years is smart enough for you to keep it there. So do us all a favor and delete any tweet that you haven't tweeted out in the last month so it doesn't come back and bite you in the future. That's my 2 cents. Seeing that happen week after week, and it's just so infuriating. If I was an agent, that was the very first thing I would make you do. Don't get rid of your Twitter. You can keep your Twitter. Just delete a bunch of old stuff. Mark Cuban tells you any thought that you had longer than 2 weeks ago is not important enough to keep in the cyberspace. And it's harder to tell people that you've grown and changed as a person if you don't get rid of that in the past. So
Yeah, we're constantly evolving. We're constantly changing our opinions. I mean, just look at society. Everyone changes as they grow. Society has changed their opinion of different things throughout the years. But something I was told in high school that stuck with me is the internet is public and permanent. It doesn't matter what privacy setting you have. It doesn't matter, when if you sent it out 10 years ago, if it's on MySpace and no one uses MySpace anymore. If someone wants to find it, there's a way to find it. So do what you can to get that off the online sphere.
Yes, definitely. Just do it. I'm going to take my own advice this week and get rid of all of my old tweets, but that's our recommendation from our end. Guys, we have a really exciting episode again for you next week, and we actually have a couple of really great guests coming up. We're branching out into some different areas, and I'm very excited about it. So we hope that you'll come back and listen, and we'll see you next Monday.